Good morning. I see there's some folks with me. Welcome. Um, Hopefully you can hear me all right. Thank you for taking the time to join me in this beautiful Saturday morning adventure in taking our true seat. Today, I wanted to create a little bit more of a conscious container, so thus the Zoom format. I've been enjoying playing with these Facebook Lives, and I just wanted to, it's a little bit like the difference between being in a conference when people are walking in and out of the room as compared to being in an intimate living room with some beloveds who are all showing up. So thank you for showing up. And I'm going to just dive right into what I feel is some juicy context, and then we'll have a experiential opportunity to really put what I'm sharing into the somatic laboratory and give you all a bit of an opportunity to have a direct experience in your own way. And then I'll have some time at the end if anybody has questions or anything else that you want to open up with more depth that I haven't covered. So again, welcome. I'm not going to do a long, sometimes I do these sort of intro grounding meditations. And for today, because I see that some of you have been with me before, and some of you are new, so we're going to just suppose that everyone showing up knows where their sits bones are, and we're just going to do a really simple alignment process just so that we can receive the information from below the mind, the thinking mind so much, and just start to entrain with more of the field of the heart and the central core as a place of listening. So what I'd love to do, and just take like 2 minutes here at the most, is while we're all coming and landing and settling in, just go ahead and find your seat. So hopefully you're sitting in such a way where you can have some support below you or behind you, whatever feels good. And just go ahead and close your eyes for a moment and let yourself actually drop behind the eyes. And just let your breath start to take you down into your sits bones. Just feeling those little points of contact in your chair. And if you're seated in a chair like I am, my long bones in my legs are also out before me, and I can feel my feet on the ground. I would suggest this position if that's comfortable for you. Obviously, if you want to sit cross-legged, that's fine too. But what we want to allow is for the spine to have an opportunity to really elongate and to find that beautiful sense of just alignment and openness and receptivity, where the heart can expand, the base can be supported, the pelvic bowl can be supported, and then you have room in your chest to really let your lungs take up their space, let your heart take up its space. So as we begin here, just again, finding your sits bones, finding your feet, finding your breath, and just letting your spine grow tall out of this sense of ground and support. Perhaps just taking a breath and lighting up your spine like the tree of life that it is. And allowing the energy around your eyes to just softly melt down and back and in. And if you like, just allowing a little attention above the head in the space of the crown. So a sense of elongation or pulling up from the crown. And just letting yourself settle down into your seat, into your lap. And I invite you to just be here with me this morning in this really fresh, open space of not knowing, of curiosity, and just letting yourself connect with the energetic feeling of what might have invoked your curiosity and anything that I wrote in my invitation. If there's something in particular that's alive for you to bring attention to in your direct experience this morning. Just letting yourself touch in with that, like you're kindling that fire of aliveness, of what's calling for greater depth, greater embodiment, greater presence within you. And we'll just let that be an offering, a prayer to the altar of our shared field, just bringing what's most alive within you as that prayer. Just super simple. Doesn't even need to have a bunch of words. Just, if you can, connecting with that feeling space of openness, of curiosity, of interest. If you're here, there's something that brought you here. Just connecting in with that. And letting your breath just touch in with that space. Perhaps you feel that somewhere around your heart or your belly, your hara, your womb, somewhere in the space of the core, the sense of warmth, of aliveness, this feeling that lets you know that you are alive and here. So again, taking a breath into that space again. Letting that space infuse your spine and just allow an even greater expansion around your chest, and even deeper landing in your sits bones and your feet. And just let your root system just drop down into Gaia, and let yourself just connect in with the fact that I am here. I am here in this body, in this morning, April 7th, 2018, in this exploration freshly of taking my true seat. So welcome again, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and just begin here. Hopefully you're all feeling a bit more arrived. What I would like to explore today is some subject matter that's been very rich for me in my own journey, and I know that it is for you in the sense that you're also human beings. So this human beingness experience is a great mystery school, yeah? And one of the things that I have been really intrigued by is what I call this core paradox that we have. You could say the human being is a sacred cross, in that we have this verticality, what we experience through our central channel. And the vertical aspect of our being is where we meet more of the continuum of our eternal nature. And then we also have this horizontal dimension of the cross, you could say, of being a human being, which is where we connect in with more of our biological temporal nature, the realm of impermanence, the realm of temporal reality. And so as both biological beings and as what I at least believe and have contact with is that we're also eternal beings. And so we are, the human being, you could say, lives at the crossroads of that sacred cross. And most fundamentally, the heart itself is the center of that crossroads. The heart and the core itself are at the center of that crossroads. And so what a beautiful metaphor. You know, we see this, the symbology of the cross in many different traditions throughout all indigenous cultures and different religious traditions. And, you know, it's depicted and has different meanings. But from my perspective, it's indicating the mystery school of being human. And so part of the paradox of this mystery school is that you could say from a psychobiological perspective, from a developmental perspective, we have certain needs for us to grow and to evolve and to have, you know, relative levels of sanity and coherence. And so from a psychobiological perspective, we as human beings are always seeking the sense of ground or security or safety, or you could say most essentially the need we have for trust. And I love looking at embryological motifs. So for example, from the very beginning of our development, just for our body to develop and grow into a human being who has, basic functioning, has 10 fingers and 10 toes, and our senses available to us, and all that the divine design considers to be a full human being, we have what's called implantation. Implantation is where the sperm and the ovum after conception have come together, and there's this beautiful thing called mitosis where cells are dividing, subdividing, and essentially we're this little crystalline protoplasmic orb of mostly liquid. And at a certain point, we make this profound journey through the birth canal, through the uterine wall, and we land through the fallopian tubes, and we land in what's called implantation, where we actually the mother secretes certain chemicals and hormones and chooses not to reject us and see us as foreign, and actually receives us, and we are able to implant. Interestingly, a lot of little beings don't make it past that. It's a lot of times where miscarriages happen. So just from a embryological, motif, I'm sharing this to say that you can think of implantation as our first, biological motif of this need for ground. It's where we essentially ground into the uterine wall. And from that point, we develop a midline, we develop a fulcrum in which all of our systems organize around. And so this is also why so much of the emphasis in my work has to do with bringing our attention back to this original origin space of that fulcrum of development, of where we are essentially organized around. And so without implantation, we don't get to have a development of a midline. So this is part of, again, the divine design. This is beautiful, and it's a true need of ours to have this sense of ground. And I would elaborate on ground again with the feeling sense on a psycho-emotional spiritual level, of the sense of the feeling states of safety, of security, of permanence, of certainty. And then we also have, you could say, the opposite needs. We have the needs for uncertainty and for the feelings of freedom and autonomy, and later what we do in our development called individuation. But what I want to talk about here for a moment is that, so here we are with this innocent need for, not just in the beginning, not just in implantation, but throughout our entire lives, we have this need for ground. So consciousness is always seeking ground. It's always seeking some way of identifying a sense of self in relationship to a sense of a world, in relationship to a sense of other, in relationship to God, in relationship to the biofield, in relationship to our own bodies. We're always seeking a sense of, where can I let my attention land in such a way where I can base my trust? And this is where the paradox comes in, is that we also live in this field of life that you could say its most central characteristic is called impermanence. And the fact is that everything is always in flux. It's always changing. And there's actually not a lot of certainty or security or permanence in terms of what we call life. It's a fluid process. And again, on a biological perspective, we are, science has proven at this point that what we call the human being, or any sentient life form, is mostly comprised of water, of different fluid constituents. And our true nature is actually fluid. So here we are with one, you could say, psychobiological initiative for seeking ground, seeking permanence, seeking security, seeking where we can place our trust. And then here's in the same moment, this fact that there's not a lot of places where we can actually sincerely put that trust. And so here's the funny thing about being human, is that I would say that the basis of our fundamental suffering in the human experience is that we're trying to fix a constant. We're trying to create a ground or a rigidity, a constancy on what is actually a fluid process. And that, by my standards, is what you could say is the definition of suffering. Yeah, you all resonating? So when we try to make ourselves or our finances or our children or our husband or our wives or our home or our world at large, when we try to make it into something solid and constant and rigid, generally speaking, because again, life is a fluid process, it's not gonna go over so well. And so what happens is that what I mean by suffering is that we end up putting our ground, this need in our consciousness to find a place to rest, essentially. We end up putting it on all this kind of like inner mechanics of what I call our survival circuitry, where, we spend way too much time orienting to that. Our survival and our ground is all about matter. It's all about form. It's all about, whether it's money or securing a relationship or securing a job or securing a home or, all these ways that our attention is constantly out in all of this external referencing on the world of matter, on the world of form, which in our interesting culture, what I'm speaking to is there's more of we're under a bit of a delusion. It's not very upfront and center that the nature of reality is a fluid process. We buy in to that we can somehow, control and manipulate and dominate. This is the dominant culture that says, somehow as human beings, we can, we're at the top of the food chain, we're at the top of the hierarchical matrix. We can dominate this biological expression of this fluid process. We're going to fix it into a constant. And so, again, this is the essential basis of our suffering, because it's not really possible. So, again, what ends up happening, though, that I want to just elaborate on a little bit further, and I know that you all know because you've done enough research at this point in your own human laboratory, is that if we're spending most of our life force on trying to fix a constant on the material plane, it's very disturbing, you could say, to our psychobiology, in the sense that we're not actually designed fundamentally to be doing that. And so there's consequences. And I'll just share briefly a little bit of a personal story in my own research with this. So, I'm someone who, let's say, has maybe been a little bit on the other side of the extreme of the spectrum, and that I'm someone who, hasn't had a lot of material, security, if you will, in my life. And so I've been a little bit more on the frontier, pioneering the edge of, what's it like to place my trust always sort of on the edge of making changes in my life, and sort of, following my heart, following my spirit, following what I've felt has been true for me. That's really been my guidance system, is to, not buy in so much into what our culture says, again, is security and safety. And I've lived more of a life of the soul, more of following what's really my sense of what's true in my experience, what's felt like, where my evolution is, what brings me alive. And so in that sense, I've been somebody who hasn't had a lot of material security. So to my, psychoneurobiology, I have lived at times in a fair amount of, insecurity, in the sense of having a little known to me in those ways, moving a lot from different homes, not somebody who has a job per se, being a bit of an entrepreneur and always creating and recreating myself. And so at times, recently I transitioned from living in Hawaii and coming back to the Bay Area, and just having, a whole new palette, a whole new canvas to play in, to create in. And, what I started to find was, again, on this very psychobiological level, innocently being uprooted from where I was, grounded into that biofield in Hawaii, being uprooted and suddenly in a new environment and not a lot of knowns in terms of work and all of this business. I would find that I would wake up in the morning often with this underlying tone of a kind of anxiety, or anxiety and then swinging into depression, these two sort of modes. And as I was being with these states, once I would get up and I would meditate and do yoga and do my practices, I was fine. I would ground myself back into the present moment. But I got really curious about, what is this that's arising in my subconscious when I wake up in the mornings? And I could remember other times in my life where this would be the case. And as I started sharing this with some of my friends and colleagues, it came out that a lot of people actually wake up with these kind of underlying tones of anxiety / depression, or one or the other is our favorites. And what I started to get in touch with was that one of the fundamental keys to navigating what I'm calling this core paradox of, having this fundamental need, again, for trust and security and safety. And then, because for me, I've been someone who's been so interested in opening my body and my heart, my spirit to this larger field, I started to see that you could say the antidote to the option to suffering, like the saying of suffering is optional. Well, the option became clear to me that it had everything to do with being really honest about what I was actually feeling. So the subtle places where the tendencies of my own conditioned mind to avoid directly feeling how insecure I actually felt, how anxious I actually felt, how scared I actually felt, how much grief there was in my heart from, past losses and past experiences. And this is what we do. We just, it's intense being a human being. There's a lot to feel. And so there tends to be an accumulation of these unfelt, directly felt moments that then accumulate in our body-mind experience and begin to filter the present moment and arise as our subconscious babble. And so I got really present with just inviting a deeper honesty around these feeling spaces. And what I want to name here is that this is really the first level of how we can start to, you could say, regrow or repair this fundamental trust. Because the real breaking of the trust that we experience, there's components of it that we could say go back to intergenerational trauma and ancestral trauma and early developmental trauma that has to do with, our early attachment story and how well we were attuned to and how well our early connection needs were met, because trust is really, the foundation of trust grows on how securely we were able to attach as little beings. So we all have, that background story that's also part of what's a filter for us. But the real crux of this is how our relationship is to how honest we are with ourselves, and thus how honest we are with others and with our life process. That's the basis of trust. And so how honest we're able to be with ourselves, again, has everything to do with these early developmental experiences and our sense of self. So just bear with me for a moment. I share in a very nonlinear way. And part of it is that what I'm sharing is, in a way, it's not kind of trying to do this, but it's in a way kind of crashing the programs of where the mind tries to have a linear process of holding on to things. So just hang in here with me and keep feeling in with your heart about where I'm pointing to. So it's like multiple dimensions are pouring in at once here. So one of the pieces that I want to name so that we can have this kind of reconnection with our fundamental innocence is that, again, back to the psychobiological needs when we're little beings coming in and those needs for ground and for security. Anything when we're little beings that feels like a threat to our attachment bond, to our primary caregivers, anything that feels like a threat to that is a threat to our survival. So if we have some impulse, some movement of aliveness, some direction of an impulse that's really coming from deep inside of us as an expression of our aliveness, if in some way that's shut down, that's not landing as supported from our caregivers, if we're being shamed, or just, if you watch little kids, they have so much life force moving through them. And it can be intense for the adults around them of how to actually support that amount of life force, because it can be a threat to the adults, right? And wherever they've landed in what they're allowing in their experience. So my point is that this is where we originally learned that it's not okay to express what's honestly moving through our channel, what's honestly expressing as our truth, as just what's alive and moving through us. So little by little, we start to leave our internal referencing system. We start to leave, our direct experience and our connection to this more fundamental, primordial, the primacy of our immediate experience, and what I think of as really, our innocent nature. And we become, enculturated, socialized, and we become more and more externally referenced. And it's more about, how can I be the good boy or the good girl? And what kind of, facial emotional affect do I need to take on to present to the world? And, it's more and more and more leaving external to secure the bond with our environment. And so by the time you're, 5 or 6 or 7 or 8, for most of us in Western culture anyways, it's done a pretty good job of taking us away from this primal intimacy and innocence with our direct feeling nature and the essential trust in expressing that. Unless you were someone, who grew up in an environment where that was relatively supported, and you learned more of what we call secure attachment. You learned that it was safe to be yourself. It was safe to express your needs and your feelings and your truths, and your environment did a good job of validating that and supporting that. So you may be a being who grew up in that way and lives in your experience of yourself, of other in the world in such a way where you have more of a capacity to be transparent related to your internal experience and how you share yourself with life. I think more likely, given that it's 2018 on planet Gaia, and that we are all, living at the affect of years and years and years and years of evolution of intergenerational trauma, more than likely, your parents did the best that they could. And most likely you too are at the end of the line metabolizing a fair amount of intergenerational ancestral trauma through your own self matrix, through how you're navigating being you and how you're navigating being you in relationship to quote other and quote world. So let's just say we're all carrying some amount of that and we're all metabolizing it and we're all doing the best that we can. And what I want to come back to here, and in a moment, we'll go into a little bit more of an experiential somatic process with this. So to metabolize the situation and make good food of it, turn it into our medicine, turn it into something that's actually, nourishing and replenishing our systems rather than draining our life force, aging us, breaking our systems down, breaking down our health, breaking down our immune system. To turn this whole situation from being in the survival circuitry where, we are innocently, constantly seeking ground, trying to fix a constant on a fluid process, where we can start to participate in a way is, I would say, the ultimate goal of all, psycho-spiritual biological work is to bring a human being to the point where they have agency again, where they recognize that they are at choice, and we're not just living at the more victim affect mentality of our situation, just caught in these old neurogrooves, those old neural networks of survival. And again, the innocent delusion of thinking that we can find a sense of security, safety, trust, ground in this fluid experience. So we need to discover that we're actually at choice at any given moment. And that even if you wake up, like what I started to find with this period where I was waking up with these, what I called these two characters of depression and anxiety, what I would do once I woke up and I started to be with it and get honest about my feelings and let them come up and allow space in my heart for the grief that was there, the fear that was there, the anger that was there, the frustration, or whatever the raw emotion that was present. Immediately after I was just willing to feel it, I would land back in this central core space in my body and in my awareness of where I could clearly see that I was at choice about what I wanted to place my attention on, whether I wanted to be grateful and creative and innovative and in love with my life, or if I wanted to choose to get sticky with these perspectives of deficiency and lack and unworthiness and, projections about fears in the future based on losses of the past and, all of that business we all know so well. So these are the superpowers that we have as human beings once we start to get honest and we allow that dam to break of our raw human experience. Then we immediately recognize the intimacy, the immediacy of intimacy that is our power to actually conduct this energy system of our perceptual nature into what is it that we wish to create for ourselves? What is this presence that we aspire to be in the world? What is the, ways in which we are stewarding our own compassionate leadership inside of a world that's in profound transition? So this is a much more, empowered, life-enhancing, immune-supporting neurocircuitry, you could say, the chemistry set that's involved with placing our attention into that crucible of agency, a recognition of the choice that we have. So why I'm so fascinated and obsessed with bringing this all into somatic experience, and that I really feel is going to become more and more and more of the frontier, is that from what I can tell, working with many people over the last 25 years and my own self in this laboratory, is that, we also have come out of generations of attempting to, find the solution to this core paradox, whether you're coming from a Buddhist perspective or an Advaita Vedanta perspective or, more of a psychological perspective. There's all kinds of ways that I think bottom line is we've been approaching it from more of a mental, more of a cognitive perspective, and that our processes haven't engaged the body and the breath so much. And so it's limited. And what I want to suggest and start to bring us into in a moment here a little more directly, and some of you have, explored with me in previous times, is that when we bring the body, the mind, and the breath, in other words, the breath meaning the spirit, together in the present moment, we have access to dissolving the defense structures, the strategies, the limited versions of who we take ourselves to be, who we take life to be, who we take other to be. We have the power to participate in the dissolve of those structures. And we begin to enter into, you could say, the mystery school that life actually is, that the human being, again, this sacred cross actually is. And we begin to participate in our deeper facility of being a presence of consciousness that is connected fundamentally to a biofield called Gaia and to a noosphere called the cosmos that is our true inheritance, our true home. And it's the only place that we can actually discover directly a nourishing ground of being that's accurate, that can fortify our cells, that can fortify our heart, that can fortify our psyche, that can give us the guidance system to navigate what it actually means to fully be here, to fully incarnate in this body and in this life and show up, as who each of us is uniquely who we came to be. And so we can start to live beyond just regurgitation in the nervous system, beyond just, continuing to cycle old nervous system stories. We drop below the nervous system level of identity into more of our primordial felt sense of who we are, which is much deeper, which is constantly, again, it's a fluid process. It's constantly reinventing itself, quite literally on the level of our cells and our organs, as well as our psyche and our, the movement of consciousness. And truly, we are, you could say the human being is living at the event horizon, at the frontier of participating in stewarding that evolution of what it actually means to be here. So from my perspective, this is a much more interesting place to live from, as opposed to the other option, right? The suffering option, the stuck in the limited points of view, stuck in the old stories, stuck in the old neural networks, stuck in the victimhood mentality where we don't have agency, basically stuck in the storyline of the limited versions of what we inherited from our culture, from our families. So it's not to say that all of that isn't also part of the divine design of where we are. It's just that we're actually at choice about how we either metabolize that, turn it into fuel, turn it into nourishment, turn it into greater longevity, greater intelligence, that's about going into more of our creative genius, or we continue to keep looping and spiraling down into entropic forces, into draining the system and basically towards death. So we have to get more, I would say, present to the moment-to-moment choices of how we're putting, again, that innocent need of our consciousness that's looking for where it can rest, where it can find its ground. We have to become more and more aware of what we're doing with that facility inside of ourselves. Are we making it all about the material world and the forms whose nature are going to come and go? Or are we putting that attention more and more and more each day, each moment, on the central channel core of where we have access to more of our eternal being, where we can actually, look out from those eyes and hear from those ears and touch the world from that fundamental space inside of the embrace of yes, our precious humanness, who's also a biological animal who knows that it does live in temporal reality, that it is going to die, that this is, on some level, a finite temporal experience, and that we have to care for that. We have to be aware of how we walk across the street, and what foods we put in this body, and what thoughts we think, and what emotions, we hang out in. So this is our beautiful stewardship, our beautiful responsibility and participation. So I think I've made myself clear about the situation here. What I'd like to do is just bring us into a little bit of a somatic practice where we can have a taste more directly of what I'm speaking to around dissolving our own defense structures, which is the only thing that keeps us feeling separate from ourselves, from life, from our eternal nature, from the biofield, from each other. That defense structure is, you could say, made up of all of the unfelt feelings of our past, of our particular early story, our developmental story, our ancestors, our cultural matrix, all of that stuff. Rather than making it wrong and bad and trying to get rid of it and all that business, we can actually bring our breath and bring some sound and bring some touch and bring our awareness to bring them all together, and we create a kind of internal alchemy in which who we take ourselves to be can begin to enter into more of a fluid state. And I think without further ado, I will just start to bring us into more of a felt experience of this. So for those of you who are new with me, I'm going to be bringing in some sounds. In my background as a Continuum teacher, the founder of Continuum, Emily Conrad, she realized that sound was the most powerful way that we can dissolve this defense structure. And that sound, bringing our own internal sounds, has a way of permeating dense tissue structures. And dense tissue structure is basically just repressed breath. And so the sounds are audible exhales that pattern interrupt the normal way that we breathe. When we pattern interrupt the normal way that we breathe, we pattern interrupt the normal way that we configure ourselves, the normal way that we are trying to fix a fluid process into a constant rigidity. So I invite you to just explore this and see where your consciousness can begin to settle into this this open space of where sound vibration, internal sound vibration, and your touch and your feeling sense of your being all begin to be directly contacted. So again, we're going below the mind, below the nervous system, below the nervous system rigidity and holding in the body, and we're re-entering back into that fluid stream, that fluid process that we are. And let's just explore and experiment a little bit freshly with the nourishment that's there, the yummy neurochemistry set that's there, the feeling states that actually meet these needs that we have for connection, for trust, for our freedom, for being attuned to. So what I want to suggest is that you place your hands on your belly. If you can, place your hands directly on your bare belly underneath your clothes. And go ahead and close your eyes. And just feel your hands touching your belly, and feel your belly feeling your hands. And let your breath just make some contact there. Breathing into your hands, feeling the belly expand. And as you exhale, Feeling the belly soften in towards your spine. So just taking a few breaths like this with me, letting the belly expand on the in-breath and letting the belly soften in towards your spine on the out-breath. Just checking in, noticing your sits bones again on the chair, maybe squeezing your perineum a little bit, just saying hello to your root. Exhaling, letting your belly soften in towards your spine. Taking a deep breath, letting the belly expand. And letting that energy connect all the way down into your root, your pelvis, your genitals, your sits bones, your sacrum. So quite literally, this need for a sense of ground can be found. The only place it can really, really fundamentally be found is quite literally in the root of your body, in the belly, in the hara, in the womb space, and the root, the perineum. As we start to bring our attention there, that part of the body is no longer abandoned. We're not up here, up in the higher centers trying to manage our lives. We're actually letting the spirit of your awareness settle down into the lower body. And from this place, just feel your sits bones, feel the weight of your legs. Again, feel the palms of your feet. You might want to spread your toes, stretch the palms of your feet into the ground. And I invite you to just freshly connect with your sense of gratitude and connection with Gaia. Just saying in your own way, thank you. Thank you for my life. Thank you for this healthy body. Thank you for this home. Thank you for all the ways that I am materially taken care of. For the food, the nourishment, the clothes, the warm shelter. Just let yourself for a moment grok the fact that you are well taken care of. You have what you need on a most, material level. And just letting yourself really, any survival parts of you, letting them connect with this fact that you're okay, you're safe, you're cared for, you're well nourished, you're sheltered in this moment. Just basic needs are met. Giving thanks for that. And see if you can let the weight of your body settle down like 5% more into actually resting on the earth. Feeling this contact again, your hands on your belly, letting yourself know, maybe just even saying to yourself, I'm here, I'm safe, it's safe for me to be here, I'm okay. Whatever your words are for yourself, letting yourself know on this really innocent level that you're here. It's safe for your spirit to actually settle in your body and actually settle into this gravitational field, this ground with Gaia. And letting yourself again just feel the innocence of your love and your natural connection with the earth. Taking a breath into that love, that gratitude, that natural connection. And we begin to access this this very just basic, essential coherence. As soon as we start to tap into our gratitude for our life, we tap into slowing down, a simplicity, a natural coherence. And from this space, I want to just bring in a little bit of some sound for us to work with in terms of growing our connection to the central channel space, that original midline that was created after implantation, that is still the organizing fulcrum in which all of our consciousness, our bodily processes and our consciousness continue to find their homeostasis and orientation around this central axis, this central core axis. And this is why I can't reiterate, I can't like reiterate, accentuate this enough, is that coherence and finding, you could say, our internal compass, our guidance system in life, it's not some abstraction, it's actually in our core. When the belly center and the root and the heart and the throat and the solar plexus and the center of the head and the crown, this whole central channel, quite literally come into biological oscillation, coherence, we experience that, we land in that as a felt sense of trust, perceptual trust in ourselves, in life, in God. So let's give this a little bit of a spin, a little bit of a whirl. And what we're going to do is play with this sound, Yuri, which one of my beautiful brothers, Cass Phelps, who also has a background in continuum, discovered this sound in the laboratory. And I was playing with this last week in a live class and remembering what a potent sound it is in terms of bringing us right into that core space and then allowing that core space to begin to expand through our tissues. So the Yuri, take the Yuri down and in and then let it expand out. So these sounds, they're not so much external, they're more about internal vibration. What I would suggest is keep a hand on your belly, and if you like, place a hand somewhere around your heart, your chest. And we'll just do this for a few minutes. Here we go. Bringing your attention inside, closing your eyes. I'm going to make the sound, and you can just join me in your own way with your own breath rhythm. Let the sound take you inside. So notice the sound is an audible exhale again. We're pattern interrupting the normal way we breathe. So you want to let that audible exhale happen and then let the in-breath come. So really let the in-breath come after you've let the sound out. Fill your lungs, fill your belly, fill that core space. Fill, and then let the sound come again. And we'll just do this a few more times. Just as little tracking indicators. The year, the why you are, most likely is taking you in into your core. And then the RE, is taking you, expanding you, lateralizing you through your side body, and kind of in a 360-degree expanding out. So just eyes closed, feeling your hands on your core, awareness inside, being with the audible exhale of the sound and vibration inside, and then letting the in-breath come and enjoying any pleasure of that open space and intimacy that you may be beginning to feel. Letting that in-breath come. And I want to just bring in one more element to play with here, and that is to let your eyes follow the movement of the sound. So you can notice that you can direct the sound down towards your belly, towards your root, and let your inner eye follow that downward energy. And then you might find that with the I find that my eyes then go up towards the third ventricle in the brain, towards the pituitary, the pineal, more of the central axis in the brain, in the head center, and the crown. So you want to play with letting the eye movements, just exploring that central channel space as if you're moving the sound with the movements of your eyes. Just really gently see if you want to explore bringing in that element. So wherever you are, deep breath in, just noticing any new spaces opening up through your core. Now, as we keep going, if we were to just keep going deeper and deeper with this, you'll find that the tendencies of the more externally based mind start to come more and more and more into these nuances of intimacy inside. So, for example, as I started to engage my eyes, I started to then sense more into the back channel of the back of the throat, the soft tissue in the back of the throat, the internal space of the mouth, the tongue, the lips. All of this is starting to cue in to more of the soft tissue in the core of the body, where we again start to drop below the nervous system levels, the more speedier mechanical movements of conditioned mind, and we start to drop more and more and more into primordial first body level consciousness. In other words, our direct experience of what we can actually feel on a sensual, first order, directly felt level. And so when awareness starts to land in that quality, that is the true seat. That is what I'm referring to on one level of taking our true seat, is experiencing life, ourselves, our emotions, all that we can't control and all that we can participate in, from more of this directly felt, in the moment, in the alive feeling, sentience of where we actually have agency, where we have choice, where we can direct our attention, where we can be more conscious with our speech, where we can be more conscious with our choices. So until we land in that space, most likely we're living more in the nervous system levels of our history and of our culture and our conditioning and of more of the compartmentalizations of the mind. So this space that we're starting to access, you could say, is more of our wholeness, our biological breath that's connected to a biofield and to more of our eternal nature. So by virtue of being on this format of this call and this video style and being in a seated position and only wanting to spend about an hour here today with you all, I'm not going to go on and on and on and on, but just to give you a taste, hopefully you could all see that just in a very short amount of time, you're starting to access a very different dimension of your being. So what I would love to do is just check in and see if anybody has any questions. So there's a chat box here that you can, to the right of your screen, that you can, if you have any questions about anything that I shared today, anything about the practice, anything about the content or context of what I shared, please feel free to just write something in the chat box and I'll do my best to answer that. And for those of you who are not in a verbal space or a mental space and already were accessing, a deeper place from what we just started to explore, and if what's alive for you is to just keep going with that, then certainly I encourage you to do that. You can take this practice and go and lie down and keep exploring with the sounds and go deeper. If you are complete and you want to just go into your greater space, by all means, go for it. I want to just answer one of the questions here. So somebody's asking me, tell me more about Continuum. So Continuum is a huge part of my background. I'm a Continuum teacher, and it's a body of work that's been developing over the last 50 years. Again, through a woman named Emily Conrad, also someone named Susan Harper, and there are many teachers at this point. Emily passed away about 4 years ago, and so we're still in this process of pioneering and evolving the work. But essentially, it's been a discovery process of, for Emily, it was about who are we beyond just this cultural conditioned matrix of what we call being human. Who are we as a biological, planetary cosmic frontier, and how can we participate in that evolution? And so on one level, Continuum has been a mystery school work. She literally had beings from different time periods, different mystery schools come to her and show her different sounds that were used in the Asclepian temples, ancient Greece, the Egyptian temples, Mongolian, sounds. So all the sounds we work with in Continuum are not particularly esoteric, but they're vibratory and they create shapes that'll create internal spaces for us to, again, dissolve the defense structure, dissolve the history, dissolve the limited views, and open into more of our primordial anatomy, you could say. So there are ways of dissolving the cultural anatomy and opening to more of our primordial, more of our fluid nature, more of a way to access who we are, again, as more of a planetary process that's unfolding. And so it's a beautiful way, it's a self-healing practice, one, to dissolve the defense structures. Two, she found that she was able to literally, take people who had, who were told they could never walk, who were paraplegic, quadriplegic even, and actually dissolve some of the breakdown in the where the nervous system was lost connection, and actually repair tissue, or dissolve scar tissue and create movement, create flow. So it was also a modality that was used and is still used as a therapy to help people with injuries or certain conditions, particularly PTSD, any kind of shock traumas, developmental traumas as well. It's a way of creating safety for oneself, you could say, essentially. A way of creating a sense of safety in the body, again, so that we can actually rest and open to more of who we are. And that's where it segues into being more of a mystery school. So we would work with different motifs. Like I started to talk a little bit today about the embryo. That's a huge motif that we work with. So there's biological motifs that we see in nature through all different kinds of cultures throughout time that are depicting, you could say, biological codes that we can actually access directly by going into the mystery school directly. So what I offer these days that I call core embodiment is really a synthesis of where my background in continuum and working with sounds meets my background in biodynamic cranial and a lot of understandings and experiences that I gleaned around this whole sacred cross that I spoke to today, of how we can find perceptual integrity, how we can find a perceptual space that we can trust, that's present, that's fresh, where we are, again, at choice, where we have agency, where we're not just living at the affect of our past, projecting that onto the future. And so what I call core embodiment is really where these different paths come together and provide some more grounded skills in terms of how to navigate this whole business of being human, having biological needs, and living in a world that is by its nature constantly changing and in flux. So in a way, it's an antidote. It's a process to discover how to meet this fluid process, be a verb, be a fluid process in a changing world, and navigate that with grace, while also tending to these very human needs that we have for security, for certainty, for safety, for connection, for attunement, and also for autonomy and individuation and freedom. And ultimately, I would say our greatest needs are to contribute and to be a part of the solution, to be, using this human life to be a place of innovation, a place of creativity, letting our genius really come through and take our leadership in various ways, to, be a focal point where our speech and our touch and our way of being in life is actually, a part of the solution and not so much the problem. So that's what I'm up to, is I feel that these are very fundamental human issues that we're all confronted with. And what I see in my practice of working with people for over 25 years is that, the default mechanisms of going into addiction or spiritual bypass, or, using your career as a way to bypass this fundamental situation, or, using your kids or your family or your relationship, or, all kinds of ways that we avoid directly feeling and meeting the vulnerability of this situation of being human. And again, this crossroads there's another option. There's an option of showing up and actually opening to it, opening our hearts fully, opening our bodies fully, opening our breaths fully, opening our psyches fully, and being that love laboratory where we start to pioneer and give birth to, our own unique expressions. And for those of you who are interested in my upcoming course in thriving, I just looked at the clock, it's 11:11. Woohoo! That's what the course is about. Is it takes people through a process, a 2-month process of composting the old stories, composting the old ancestry, metabolizing it, loving it up, bringing it home, creating a safe place for all the places that haven't felt safe, and essentially repotentizing all that energy, bringing it into our vitality and our potency, and letting it become, the new thrust, the new delivery system of what it is that we each want to create for ourselves, more from a place of destiny rather than default. So if you have any interest about that, it's coming up on April 17th, very soon. And I'm happy to talk to any of you directly, privately, one-on-one. Just reach out to me, send me an email, send me a Facebook message. If you don't know how to reach me, ajaya@ajayasummers.com or my website, ajayasummers.com. Thank you so much for being with me here today. Does anybody else have any other questions before we wrap it up, or anything else you want to presence? All right. Well, thank you, all of you who showed up with me live this morning and created this beautiful field of resonance. I am so grateful. Bless you, bless your life, and I hope to meet with you in some way soon. Much love.